Welcome, everyone, to the Retirement Success in Maine podcast. My name is Ben Smith. I'm joined by my two co-hosts, per usual, Abby Duty and Curtis Wister, the Annika Sorenstam and Tiger Woods to my Zach Johnson. How are you guys doing today?
Good. How are you?
Good. Really excited. This is kind of a kind of project passion of ours on this topic today. Obviously, as you can kind of get from the lead, we're going to talk golf today. And that's really the one hobby that I think when everyone kind of hears about retirement, that they really associate with this. What's the hobby that you're going to get into? What's that passion that you always wanted to do and now you have time to do? And of course, golf is something that can soak up some time. So yeah, of course, we hear from a lot of people as they announce retirement is their friends and family around them say, so now that you're retired, I bet you're playing lots of golf. Well, so for some retirees, like, I don't like golf, but for some retirees, that's exactly what they want to do. But, for some people, it's like, hey, we know enough retirees that just retire and they're like, I've never kind of done certain things before, or, I've always been athletically inclined, or I do like being outside, but maybe not in a kind of a hiking perspective. Maybe I want to get into something like golf, but I've never actually played before. So how do we start learning to play? Is it too late? Or maybe we played some while we were busy in our careers, but of course, career and family and all the other things in our life kind of comes first sometimes. And maybe we haven't devoted a lot of time to the sport and we're not quite at that aptitude level, but how can we get better? So also, but what about experiencing golf courses in the state of Maine, or maybe even traveling outside the state? What are some experiences that really need to be on your list kind of going forward? So these are the questions that we've been spinning on a lot. And again, I think this is something where Curtis and I golf quite enough, I would say. Abby will be more of our representative of the beginner golfer that maybe is not in it as much. But really want to ask these questions as somebody that really could embody this, that really golf is their life, and help us kind of wade our way through these topics for retirees. So our next guest is a PGA professional. He's the head golf coach for Bates College. He's also an LPGA Tour Caddie, and he's the host of Maine Golf Talk Podcast. So you can also access him as a coach. So if you want your own help, and I think we all need a little bit of help, you can access him as a coach through henryfallgolf.com. Or again, as we referenced, listening to him at Maine Golf Talk Podcast on all the major podcast platforms. So I'd like to welcome at this time to the Retirement Success in Maine podcast, Henry Fall. Henry, appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks, Ben, and Curtis and Abby. Appreciate you guys having me on. It's a privilege.
Well, I know it's a little bit different when you're kind of on the different side of the microphone, right? Is when you're used to asking the questions versus being asked is always a different experience.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
Yeah. Well, we've been obviously you've been doing your show for a bit, and we obviously been a fan listening in and kind of getting also maybe in the middle of winter as we are right now recording this. It's always good to dream about golf. Even talking about it kind of keeps it alive for us. So love that project there. But with our show, we always want to start with you and as our expert, as our guest. Want to hear a little bit about your story, and always the first thing we're going to hear about is your growing up experience. So why don't you start there?
Yeah, no, I mean, at first I would say I've been extremely fortunate. I've had some great mentors along the way. So I actually started when I was 7 years old. I grew up in Harpswell, and I started taking lessons from Kevin Joseph at what used to be called Long Shot Driving Range in Brunswick, and just got hooked. Kind of gave me some of the fundamentals. I think I was hitting it like 150 yards at like 7 or 8 years old, which the driver was pretty good at the time.
Yeah. Nice.
That's like my pitching wedge now, but anyways, so got hooked on it, and by the time I was 11, I started playing competitively, playing state junior events, and then at age 12, I won the 12 and under Maine State Junior Championship. So that was it was a pretty quick process. Definitely at that age, we're kind of sponges and we just pick up whatever we see and do. And at the time, Tiger was kind of at his prime. So I think watching it on TV, I definitely picked up a few things from that. So, yeah, I had a really good junior career in Maine. I didn't travel too much outside of New England, I would say. I did play in a Big I Junior Classic down in North Carolina, which was one of the biggest junior events probably in the country at the time. So that was a good experience. But outside of that, the junior career was great. High school career at Mount Ara was fun. We had a really good team there, and then went on to Elms College down in Western Massachusetts to play collegiately.
So, Henry, in terms of obviously your growing up experience, if your parents are getting you into golf at 7 years old, what was their aptitude in golf? Were they already around the sport, and that's kind of some of it why you came into it, or they just said, "Hey, let's drop Henry off at long shot and hit some bombs, and we can drop him off for an hour and go do some errands"? What was them in terms of that kind of recipe that kind of allowed you kind of grow in that direction?
Yeah, I think they just wanted to get me and my sister out of the house, honestly. I think that was the answer.
Gotcha.
My dad plays a little bit, maybe once or twice a year. But no, there was really no connection between them and the sport. It was more, I think I watched it on TV at a very young age, and I kind of had an interest in it. And at the time, I was like, I was doing a bunch of things. I was taking piano lessons, art classes, other sports, obviously, too. But it was just the one thing that kind of stuck, I guess, and has stuck since then. But there was other family members we had that were kind of involved with the game. So I think when we would spend time with them, and they had like a little putting contraption in the house where it bounced back to you, like those things. Those kind of resonated too. So
nice. So you've kind of developed this hobby, this vocation, this something that you're doing a lot of that you really enjoy. But of course, there's always this kind of point with lots of different athletic careers, right? Is what do I do? Like, so I get out of college, and then obviously you're doing that in college at Elms College, but what was, I guess, like that was probably a pretty hard decision at that point about what do you want to do? What do you want to do with your kind of college degree? And how did you kind of weigh kind of becoming a PGA professional and learning about that was the direction that you wanted to go with your career?
Yeah, I think looking back on it at the time, I was so young. I just didn't really know exactly what I was going to do. I had always had this passion for golf, and I loved it, and I loved competing. But I never really put that in a career in the same, I guess, line. And I think part of it was maybe my surroundings. I just growing up, like, I don't know, being a golf professional in Maine, it always seemed kind of like, oh, it's a short season. And it seems like in season, it's so hard. Like the pros are in the shop for 6-7 days a week or whatever they're doing. So I think part of it was just my understanding at the time. So I was like, well, let's go to college, let's get a degree, let's see, what career path I want to go down. And at the time, it was sort of like a math science path. And ultimately, at the age of like 23, 24 is when I was like, you know what, I really love golf and I love coaching the game. I'm not sure if I want to be a PGA professional that does work in a shop and manages a staff and the pro shop and things like that, or if I want to be an instructor. I'm not sure, but I do want to get back into the sport that I love.
So again, at that point, I guess, so what you obviously then decide to become a PGA professional, which I'd love to hear about that path, because I know that's not an easy thing to do to get kind of in to become, I don't know if even the word is accredited as a PGA professional or getting your card, whatever that is there. But can you describe what that process is like to become a certified PGA professional?
Yeah, so I mean, you can get it in school, which in hindsight, I probably should have gone to a PGM school because I would have had it when I got out. But There's three levels, and you're considered an associate. I'm actually still an associate at this point. I'm nearing my Class A professional, I guess, certification, whatever you want to call it. But for the time being, like it's three levels. And for me, I'm taking the teaching and coaching route, which involves, giving lessons and studying under other instructors and high level coaches. There's a lot of like book work and stuff, and then examinations for each level. And then once you're certified, you're considered Class A, which, I mean, it's more just to be involved with the PGA and what doors that can open for you, being able to play in their events, and then you get a free ticket to the Masters, which is pretty cool. So that's, I guess, that's the nice little bonus.
Yeah, Henry, is there a playing requirement in terms of your ability that you have to prove too? Because I think that's like, obviously, if somebody just walks off the street, does some book work, and right, that probably wouldn't make the most sense to be teaching other people how to play the game.
Yeah, so there's a playing aptitude test, which usually you would take early on. Sometimes it may take you a few years to pass. It's pretty challenging, because it's not so much that score wise you have to be outstanding, but it's just the pressure, because you're playing 36 holes in one day and you have a score in mind, right? You have that expectation on you when you reach the first tee that morning. You're like, I got to shoot this number or better. Even if it is a 76 for 2 rounds, it's still a little bit daunting because of that sort of tournament setting and, having that target score in mind.
And is it certain courses that meet the criteria in terms of slope rating or something along those lines? Like, it has to be a certain level of difficulty, I would imagine, as well.
Yeah, they set the courses up pretty consistently. They're not super long, but they do try to make it scoreable. But that being said, like we played at Dune Grass, which I don't know if you guys have played there, but it's pretty tight, pretty narrow, a lot of layup shots, target golf. You hit one poor tee shot, you're making a bogey or double really quickly, and it's demanding, like I said, with all the pressure that's kind of put on you for that one day.
Gotcha. Well, thanks for sharing that, because I think it's really important landscape here for listeners to hear is, obviously, what does it mean to become a PGA professional? And obviously you're well on your path there to get there, but also from a teaching and training perspective, that's also important, which is why I wanted to ask you to come on. Was obviously you have that bent where, you have a lot of pros in the area that, they're running their course, right. And they're really, maybe they do teaching, but maybe that's not really their sole bent. So again, we wanted to make sure that was our focus here today with you, but love to just hear a little bit about your podcast, right? So Maine Golf Talk Podcast, love to hear the genesis of that. And for those who haven't checked you out, love to hear about maybe what you guys are talking about, what your goal with it is, and how you think it's going so far.
Yeah, so it all kind of started, honestly, because of COVID. I think we started like April or May of 2020. And, at the time, I was kind of at a standstill because we weren't able to have our golf season with Bates. I had just met Dana, honestly, and we were kind of starting to talk about caddying up for her on the LPGA Tour. And, wasn't a lot going on. So I reached out to Zach, my buddy, who's the head professional up at Sugarloaf. And we just started talking about how we can do some content together, whether it was instruction or, I'm pretty busy on Instagram. So we just were kind of throwing some ideas out there. And then we're like, what about a podcast that kind of focus on bringing further exposure to Maine golf, right? So we just kind of started. My dad's a graphic designer. We put a logo together in like 2 days, And we just went with it. And we've had some amazing guests on. We had Mike Bender on, who's Golf Digest #3 instructor in the country. And we had, his student, Austin Trudlow, who's on the Corn Ferry Tour. We've had, just numerous great guests. Clyde Clark, who designed Belgrade Lake. So we've been really fortunate.
And I'll just kind of put a plug here too. So I've not listened to every one of them, but there's a bunch that I really liked. One was Corey Lewis, because I think that so Corey Lewis and the episode you did with him in the summer was something that really resonated, because I think that's what we're kind of talking about here, about golfing and retirement. But Corey Lewis's story was he wanted to play 2,000 courses, and they were really Donald Ross courses what he wanted to play, right? So he and his wife traveling around the country, going around and playing all these Donald Rosses. And for those that don't know, Donald Ross is an architect of various golf courses in the, was it early 1900s?
Yeah.
Something along those lines. So he was a pretty popular architect, did lots of, of course, lots of kind of robust 18-hole courses. And he obviously there's a bunch in Maine as well, either 18 or 9 holes. But that was one thing, is like, well, what do we want to use as a purpose in retirement? What's something that brings us pleasure? What's something that we think is fun that maybe we can enjoy with our spouse? And that's one of the things that Corey brought up in the show with you guys. So I thought you guys did a really great job bringing that out from Corey and having this conversation. And of course he's going around the country, and what's different about Maine golf than other states and other regions and other areas. So I thought that was a really cool episode.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And he was a great guest because, number one, the little secret about that episode is, and we didn't really talk about this, he's actually a Golf Digest rater. So he travels the country rating these courses. So that's part of the reason he's able to get on, Pine Valley and other courses like that. But
because Pine Valley, and by the way, that was like his 1,000th golf course, right? That he went to, and that's extremely private, really hard to get into, is my understanding of that, right?
Yeah, no, it's probably one of the top 10 or 15 private clubs in the country. But anyways, you hear about people retiring and they get a Winnebago and they go national park kind of hopping. He's kind of the golf course hopper, right? So he and his wife are planning trips up to like Cabot Links or going to Bandon Dunes or wherever they're going. I just think that's it's such a cool thing to see. And one of the reasons we ask so many of our guests in the Wicked Fire Round, we call it, their favorite courses in Maine, is so listeners can kind of, because we know everyone's going to say a different course, right? They aren't all going to say Sugarloaf. They're not all going to say Belgrade. They're going to say Kibo or Proud Snack or even some 9-hole courses. So it gives our listeners the opportunity to hear about some of these great courses that Maine has to offer, and even regionally where in the state they can go to kind of mix things up.
Well, and what's pretty cool about, again, what your show's kind of doing too is it's not, and maybe it's the course is pretty is an important part of what you're trying to highlight, but also the experiences that people have on the golf course. And I listened to the show because I've golfed at Goose River before with Alex Plummer, Plum Dog, right? So he's talking about his course, but the culture he has at his course is a lot different. And, and some people will golf barefoot, or they'll have their dog with them, or, it's just a different culture that you would then experience at, I think prototypically or stereotypically at maybe a more private course or maybe a more upend. There's lots of ranges, just like all people. And it doesn't have to be that, here's the stereotype in my mind that I have to be buttoned up. I have to have this level of skill. That there's lots of really great casual courses with really great features around the state.
Absolutely. I think you hit it right on the head with the dogs out on the golf course. I mean, it's really funny how that argument comes to be. It's like, are we allowed to have dogs on the golf course? Are we not? You're seeing more and more clubs go to that, but you have a wide range of types of courses, designers, 9 holes, 18 holes, how quickly you get around, how long does it take? Are you walking? Are you riding? Those sorts of things. So I think people like the variety. I think people like the fact that in Maine you can have ocean golf courses and mountain golf courses. That's pretty unique to our state. I think for the most part, it's a pretty laid back state in terms of golf. I think, you go to, let's say, the metropolitan area or New Jersey, you have a lot more of these private clubs that maybe you are walking only with a caddy, or it's a little more structured. So I think people like that. They come up to Maine, even if they're from out of state, if they're, hanging out on Desert Island or something, they can go out for 9 holes and just kind of relax and get the ocean breeze. So there's a lot to love about Maine golf.
Yeah. And again, I just want to say, you guys with your show is, even though you're maybe newer as well, which we are, right, in terms of kind of pushing these out and getting this content, but, I think you guys are capturing that spirit really well, is that, these people are kind of talking about it and showing that accessibility. But that I think that's why, again, from our end, we want to kind of highlight this as an episode on our show, because, I think with golf as kind of a hobby is, again, from our end, we've also heard from a lot of guests over our shows that, hey, they've downplayed it. Well, you can't golf, 16 hours a day, 365 days a year in the state of Maine, right? That's not the only thing you could be doing in retirement, right? Retirement has to be much more than that. So with that idea is that, but we do still need hobbies like golf to keep us busy, active, and enjoying life, right? Which I think that's one of the kind of cool things about this sport is you're outside, you're enjoying probably, again, Maine's got terrific, maybe 2.5 seasons. I know mud seasons, maybe the part that's a little bit more brutal, but we have some really kind of fun area where you want to be outside enjoying it. And I will say from our end, I probably golfed the most I've ever golfed was this last year. Because, being in your house, being in, seeing your own 4 walls and going outside and seeing maybe a friend, but being socially distanced that whole time, that was the one time that I could connect with somebody and have a relaxed round, be outside, really enjoy it, but also be safe during this pandemic. And so I talk about the value I got personally from that experience of I needed to connect with people but also be outside and just have some fun playing a game. So I could see where, from a retiree perspective, that's something where I think a lot of people want is, I want to connect with others as they get older. I want to continue to be active and stay fit, but I want to also be outside. So for those, let's start here as a question. So with those that are approaching retirement or retirees, if they've not golfed before or really haven't golfed much and really want to get into the game, how would you recommend that they start and progress their skill?
Well, I'd say number one, most people at some point in their lives have some athletic background, right? Even from a younger age, even if it's been 20 years, they've been working an office job and, now they've decided to pick up the game. Most everyone has that sort of athletic background or something along those lines. So if you can tap into that, right? That's number one. But I would say the second thing would be to look for a local professional. There's a lot of great options out there for you. You don't have to take just an individual lesson. It could be a 9 and wine, which a lot of these courses have across the state, where it's sort of an introductory level where you go meet some of your friends. You can sign up as a group. You have a set of clubs. Maybe they provide clubs, and it gives you the option to kind of get in the game and feel comfortable and not sort of pressured by stepping up to a lesson tee for your first ever time touching a golf club. I will say, though, that apprehension can go away really quickly when you hit a drive 100, 200 yards off the tee straight down the middle of the driving range. So whatever sort of tension or, like I said, apprehension you've built up, that maybe it's not the calling that you're looking for in retirement, I would say give it a try, because it's amazing how many great instructors and coaches there are across even just the state of Maine, that you can go up and have a lesson within 4 or 5 swings you hit that one shot and you're hooked. I'm telling you, I've seen it. It's amazing. It's like, bang.
I'll tell you, Henry, too, just a quick story personally is I think that's how I started, like even in like after high school was, I just had a friend that said, "Hey, we're going golfing today." I'm like, I've never done it. I don't care. I got some clubs, extra ones. We're going to go out and have some fun. And I think that was the biggest thing was just being out there and just trying it. I will say from my own end is until I got lessons, which I probably was like 4 or 5 years ago and really started getting serious and taking lessons, the amount of enjoyment I got out of that has been even more exponential because all of a sudden it's like, okay, if I'm not maybe practicing all the time, but I've honed in enough fundamentals that maybe I can execute the shot I want every 2 or 3 shots. The fact, as you just said, is like, when you can flight a ball the way you want in it, you go, wow, now that's what I was trying to do. And that's the addicting thing for me is this, it's really fun to be able to execute. And what I've also learned was, hey, the average golfer out there is like a handicap of 18 to 20. Mm-hmm. And I thought I was getting in and I'm going to be like the 30, 35 and everybody else is a 7, right? And I'm just going to be the worst one on the course, holding everybody up. And that, I think for me that was my apprehension of I'm going to be so bad that I'm going to feel unwelcome and not feel I'm a part of this. But when you look around or you be part of these scrambles, everybody has these limitations to their golf games and it is a tough game. But I think that's been the fun part is that, everybody has their own kind of struggles with it and they're not that much better than you. They're not that further away from you in terms of skill level, I guess is what I'd say for those that are starting, right?
We're all terrible at one point. Even Tiger Woods and Jack Nicklaus and Annika Sorenstam, they were all terrible at one point. So we all had to pick it up at one point. And with anything in life, learning something new, there's some apprehension. But if you can just kind of be open-minded to it and say, you know what, it looks fun. And the thing is, like, you don't have to be a tournament golfer. You can make this a social sport. That's the great thing about golf is it's a sport of a lifetime. You can play it into your 90s. I know people over 100 that have played golf. So that's pretty cool. And the other thing is, like I said, if you have some friends or you go out for a little social time, it doesn't have to be like a money match every time or playing in the Maine State Amateur Championship. It can be, let's go out, play. See if we get 9 holes in on a Friday night. It's 4:00. We'll just go out, get some parks, get some drinks, and go play a few holes. Like that's fun too. So
So you had the perfect segue into my next question. So can we talk about golf accessibility as we age, right? So you just mentioned that it's good for people even into their 90s and even into their hundreds. So how is it approachable for those who, have maybe flexibility or mobility issues? And is the game adapting more to people with those types of issues? And if so, how is it adapting?
Yeah, I would say ever since kind of the 90s, 2000s, you've seen a lot more developments in technology and biomechanical studies. And let's say that like TPI, a lot of people have heard TPI. TPI is the Titleist Performance Institute. And they've done a lot of research on biomechanics and how we can get certain areas of the body to move better and increase mobility so you can reach certain positions better and hit the golf ball farther. So there's been a lot of developments on that side of the game. And a lot of the professionals and coaches are now trained in biomechanics and are TPI certified, or at least have a decent understanding of certain abilities and can cater to you and adapt their sort of methodology or whatever they're coaching. So if you can't, let's say, get the club very vertical in your backswing, right? They can adapt and say, okay, well, you're going to have a shorter, flatter backswing. That's fine. Here's how you guys still deliver the club to the ball. So it's not the student really dictates how the lesson should be. It's not the coach that dictates how the lesson should be. And I would implore you to look for a coach and stick with a coach that works around you, the student, and your sort of the things that work well for you and the things that maybe you struggle with, and because we're all different, right? I mean, even twins biomechanically have some differences, and they've done a lot of research on this, and that's why clubs are fit differently for people, and even the four of us should all probably be playing different golf balls. So that research that's been done over the last 20, 30 years has really helped, I think, kind of push along the idea that there's different swings and there's different clubs. And so I really feel like it's the most approachable it's ever been, the sport, because you can come in and even if you struggle with certain ranges of motion, you get this driver that's a lot bigger now, a lot more favorable for you to hit. You tee it up high, you get this ball that has low spin, and it just goes forever. So if you can start with that, get down in the fairway, then from there you can just sort of chip it up on the green and continue to play. So I think it's only going to keep improving as we get more and more used to this understanding that the student kind of dictates the lesson and how we can help them find their best swing.
That's great.
Henry, I want to rotate a little bit and talk about golf specifically in Maine. And I know you had an episode of your podcast back in April called the Maine 18, where you talked about kind of building an 18-hole course throughout the state, with some of your favorite holes and whatnot. I want to look at that list in kind of, what may be your list of the best golf in Maine, and look at it from an angle as, we've been talking about whether they're beginners to golf or the mid to high handicappers. And does that list change? I think for me, when I think about the best courses in Maine, I think about the views and like you mentioned, the ocean. But then I also think about trying to play somewhere like the Samoset if I've never played golf before. And I think that may not be enjoyable, for the sense of the golf struggle part. So can you just kind of talk about how that list of best golf may change, for people who may not have the most skill in the game of golf?
Yeah. So one great thing about our sport is the handicap, right? So, and Ben, you brought this up, the average handicap for a golfer is somewhere around 20, we'll say. So with handicap, you could play me in a match, and then based on the course, I would give you a certain amount of strokes for that round. And even if you do hit it in the ocean or whatever, eventually, theoretically, the match will be somewhat even and it'll be competitive, because let's say you get a stroke on a par 4 where there's really no trouble. If you hit a few good shots, you're probably going to win that hole against me. So it's the one thing with handicap that we probably have an advantage on over most any other sport is it gives the opportunity for everyone to kind of compete and be sort of level and have that opportunity. Whereas, like, let's say you and I were playing tennis against each other, you might have like this filthy backhand and I might have an overhand serve that goes 150 miles an hour. Whatever it is, someone's going to have a clear advantage, and there's no way to really handicap that.
Sure.
Right. And the net doesn't get higher for you and lower for me. Right. So that's the one beauty in golf is that with that handicap, if you are playing a tournament where it's handicapped or playing with some buddies, you can play those games and go to any course. Now, if you're just playing straight up stroke play and you want a challenge versus an easier course, you're going to go to those Oceanside or go up to Sugarloaf where it's like tree lined everywhere and like you hit a ball, it's gone no matter what. So there's definitely courses that cater better towards sort of your beginner player. The other nice thing is there's certain tee boxes, right? So there's, they call it a ladies tee, but let's call it the forward tee, number one, because if you're just getting into the game, right, why would you step back to the farthest back tee when the course is already longer to begin with. It's a harder test right off the bat because it's longer. So when you're first starting in the game, and what we've been doing more and more now with junior players is, at the age of 5, 6 or 7, when they're just getting in, is let's start them really close to the green, even ahead of those forward tees, talking like 60 yards, and see if they can make a 3. We'll call it a par. And then once they've achieved that, they move back incrementally. So kind of like laddering, right? So that's the approach I would take as you start into the game, get aligned with a coach who can help you technique wise. And then when you go to the course and you're just trying it or making sure to keep up with the group ahead of you as well, start close to the green and work your way back once you feel kind of confident and you can keep up and you're starting to hit it better, right?
I like that. And kind of to follow up there too, if, kind of what I hear you saying is regardless of kind of skill, there's ways to do these golf trips and enjoy it. And, specifically in the state of Maine, there's a ton of good golf, whether it, like you said, you're a single digit handicap or just picking up a club for the first time, you can enjoy it. Kind of a general question for you, if I'm building a golf bucket list, kind of what should we include on that list? Or what do you think people should include as they try to, have this bucket list of golf, whether it's just in Maine or wherever? Like, are there some fundamental aspects from your perspective that people should try to include and check off that list?
Are we we're talking about golf courses specifically?
Yeah. Or, or the experience of a golf trip, say, whether it's, stay on a resort that has 13 courses if you can, so or is it traveled a new place every day? I guess kind of the overall golf trip.
Okay. Golf trip. So, I would say in Maine, if you're living in Maine, you can do everything really in one day, unless you're going up to maybe Rustic Valley, which I haven't done. I'm waiting to do that. I'm excited to do that. But most every trip you can do in Maine. You can get to Sugarloaf in 2 hours. You could stay overnight and go to Sunny River. You could play Belgrade on the way up and make it a stay the night trip. So there's a lot of opportunities in Maine, but you can do a lot of them in one day, which is great. If you're traveling outside of the state, I've heard great things about like Bandon Dunes. There's Stream Song in Florida. Any of those properties where you can kind of go spend a few days and they have multiple courses. I think Bandon is up to like 7 courses now. And every single one of them is like in the top 100 on Golf Digest, which is crazy. Definitely more on the high end side, but the idea that you can just go there and just kind of like be in golf heaven for a week is just like, that's such a cool thing.
Yeah.
But outside of that, there's a lot of courses in New England too. You can go to like even Western Massachusetts. There's some great courses down that way that no one really knows about. So, you can go a lot of little trips anywhere, honestly. That's the thing about golf. It's just like you go anywhere you go, it's a new experience, right? And I hate to kind of hit on tennis here, but like all the courts are the same, right? So I guess you could be playing in a nice environment like Wimbledon or something. But with golf, it's a different experience and different landscape.
So Henry, I'd love to ask then even maybe go even further on the travel part, because I've never traveled in golfed. So I've always just kind of golfed locally and done that thing. So the whole kind of going somewhere is a bit of a mystery here. So if I'm going to go travel to say Banded Dunes, or I go somewhere and I'm going to do a golf trip, what's the best way to do that? Should I be bringing my own clubs with me? Should I be renting when I get there? Are these trips generally like, I really need a few days to do this? I need like 3 or 4 or 5 days to make these trips worthwhile. Like what's the typical experience when we travel, especially out of state, longer distances to get into like a golf vacation?
Right. So the nice thing with the bags, transporting the clubs, I would recommend bringing your own clubs if you can, unless you're going to like Jamaica or Bahamas or something. I don't know. A lot of these courses do have good rental sets, so that's nice. Even Sugarloaf has great rental sets. But I would suggest bringing your own clubs, especially if you've been fit for them, which I also recommend everybody does. Please do not, please fit your clubs if you haven't already. Playing clubs from 1980 will not serve you well in the sport. So, but I would recommend bringing your own clubs. You have ship sticks now, which is great. You can send your clubs right to the clubhouse for like $30-$40 or something like that. So if you're there for like 4 or 5 days, you just put it in a box, they ship it, boom, it's there.
Interesting. So that's what's way better than I have to take it to it's on the airplane with me. I got to do, I got also the other luggage and get my clubs and then bring it to the hotel. So that would be the hassle to me, was if I didn't know that you could ship right to the clubhouse. That would be phenomenal.
Right. I mean, you've heard nightmare stories of like, oh, I brought my clubs on the plane, my driver broke, my brand new TaylorMade, whatever, $500. I had this special shaft, everything, blah, blah, blah. But ship sticks has been around now for, like 10 plus years now. And you just, I've never used it myself, but I've seen it used a few times. And when I was working at True North last year, we got ship sticks clubs in like every day, it seemed like. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Because True North is like one of the premier destinations that we're sort of talking about right now.
Mm-hmm.
So that's convenient. And then, I would suggest bringing your own clubs. I really feel that if you have the opportunity to, it just makes the experience better too when you know if you're playing your own set, right? So,
from a confidence perspective, I think that's really important, right? Is especially when you have been fit and it's like, no, I know I hit this club, this distance, it's used to doing this thing. I've even played clubs that are very similar to what I've been fit, and it just feels like I still don't have that confidence level. And if I lose any confidence at all, then things can cascade and go really wrong. And now the golf round goes horribly bad, and I've not enjoyed it as much as I could. So I echo what you're saying there, Henry. I'd love to just hear about, obviously, just quickly on the kind of the travel to places. Because I know when we actually had a travel advisor come on, her name is Carrie Forbringer. One of the things we're saying around was, hey, in travel and retirement is really tough because sometimes we have couples that don't really agree on what they want to do, right? And I don't want to, prototype or stereotype too much here, but say one spouse says, I love to golf and the other doesn't. Well, maybe, obviously, if that spouse does want to go golfing, that they maybe find a group of buddies and they do the girls trip, they do the boys trip, they do whatever, all the golfers together go do that. And they don't feel guilty while they're doing that, hey, here's somebody that really isn't into it, but they're doing it as a favor to me. And now I don't really enjoy it as much. So in terms of those experiences, like, is that something that you're seeing happening? Obviously, we're pandemic times, but pre-pandemic or post-pandemic, is that something you're seeing kind of happening more, is more traveling to kind of destinations?
Yeah, definitely. These golf trips it's becoming an annual thing for a lot of these groups. And at Sugarloaf, for example, is a place you see it like every day in the summer, in the peak season, is groups of, whether it's 4 or 40. These groups come from all over the place, usually Massachusetts and New York, but sometimes even Nebraska or Texas. These groups really know what they're doing, and they've been doing it for a while. One thing on these golf trips too is that once you're aligned with a coach or a PGA professional, a lot of these PGA professionals set up trips themselves. So you could be going to St. Andrews with your PGA professional with 8 other members or whatever, have a 3-4 day trip where you get clinics every day, you get instruction, and then you get to go play. Like you've seen a lot of those trips as well. So there's a lot of options. And, I would say sort of the destinations that you hear a lot about are obviously Myrtle Beach, and I brought up Bandon, but, you have Scotland and Ireland, and but there's these groups all around. But the only way to really get into them and involved is by knowing somebody or just getting into the game, becoming a member at a golf course. playing in some of these men's leagues, women's leagues. And then usually there's somebody that knows about these groups that travel around. And it's always better to kind of, I think, get acquainted to those trips through somebody else that's been doing it for a while. That way you kind of get the experience, you kind of understand what's going on. And that way, if you do, let's say you go with your significant other somewhere else and they want to go to the beach instead of play golf, you know how to easily set that up so that you guys can both be happy for that trip.
Nice. I want to ask another question, Henry, here about obviously there's a lot of golfers out there that just really only golf casually, right? They just maybe go, once a month, as you said, with your dad, maybe twice a year going out. And in terms of what would you say about, hey, if somebody says, hey, I've always golfed casually and now I am retired, I have more time, I do want to do this more. How do they weigh becoming a member at a golf course, right? What would be the kind of the inputs you would say, hey, here's the benefits of becoming a member and when it would become worthwhile to you? Obviously, I'm just thinking outside the financial realm for a second, but just in terms of should I become a member or not?
Yeah, I think having at least a basic understanding of the game helps. Having played a few times, making sure that you can get around the course, let's say play 9 holes in under 3 hours, that's ideal. There's some certain things to learn, etiquette and the rules, like you don't need to know every rule, but certainly a basic understanding before getting a membership. I would start with that. Having played a few times with somebody that that kind of understands those things to help kind of guide you. And if it is just your PGA coach, that's great too. Once you sort of have that basic understanding, certainly with membership, there's a lot of options. And some of these clubs will do a trial membership or a social membership, which allows you to sort of experience the club, even outside of a playing side where, some of these courses will have gyms and like social gatherings and things like that you can get involved with, but it gives you the chance to experience that membership prior to really, joining, right? So you could start with that, but usually from a membership standpoint, it's like, do you want to play 9 holes? Do you want to play 18 holes? There's certain memberships for that. There's play cards. You could play, let's say you're more on a tight budget and you don't really play a lot. You could get a 10 play card at some of these courses where it's a little bit discounted. And maybe that's a good way of kind of getting you involved, right? It's kind of similar to some of these gym memberships you see where they kind of start you out like sort of trial basis or first few months or discounted, whatever it is. There are those options in golf. So that's great. And even from an instruction standpoint, like I was saying before, there's certain clinics you can get involved with and things to kind of get you in the door and experience it and see if you really enjoy it before making that sort of financial decision on the sport and whether you're really going to commit to it.
Gotcha. I like that. So I want to rotate a little bit again on you here. So when the three of us were thinking about this show and getting excited about it, we were thinking about the group of listeners or our clients, who would really learn a lot from this episode. And I think we concluded that we can estimate that they're probably competitive people. So when you think about with golf, and I know we talked about it a little bit ago with the beauty of the handicap system and how it naturally tries to keep things even, because naturally some people are a lot better than others at this game. What are some other ways, that friends can just get together, whether it's types of games they can play on the course? If I'm going out tomorrow with 3 of my buddies and we're all across the spectrum on skill level, are there certain types of rounds to play golf, like different game modes within just playing a round of golf that could make it fun and competitive regardless of how good we are? Could you just share some of those?
Yeah, I think there's a new game that gets developed within golf every single year, I swear. There's unlimited choices, right? There's individual, you can just play by yourself, go out and play 9 holes in the afternoon, whatever it is. If you bring your buddy, you guys could play a couple other people, best ball. You can play a scramble, so it's a team event. It doesn't have to be just individual. Again, so the great thing about golf is that you have options, and it can be communal or it can be individual. And I think it's nice to mix it up once in a while. And even at the highest level, you're seeing that. You have your Ryder Cups, you have your two-man events now, right? So you're seeing more and more of that as well. And it's exciting. I mean, who doesn't love the Ryder Cup or the Solheim Cup? I mean, those two events are just, I mean, it's awesome. So you have a lot of options, and even a lot of these courses do have a sort of weekly scramble or a league or some type of sort of fun, more laid back event. Maybe there's a little money or prizes on the line. You have your closest to the pin or the long drive. Like, there's little games within the game that are so much fun. And, you know, even someone that has just picked up the game, they have no clue what they're doing, they can step up on a par 3, hit a driver, takes a few funny bounces, goes in the hole, they win closest to the pin, and they get a hole 1. I've seen it before. It'll happen again. So, I mean, how can you beat that, right?
Right.
So bouncing back to what we were talking about a minute ago with affordability, right? So as financial advisors, we often talk about how affordable things are in retirement. And we've talked about a lot of things, right? Your own set of clubs and getting fit for them and coaching and membership. So can you kind of speak to what the affordability of some of these things are for people getting into the game?
Yeah. So I think this goes back to, if you have the option to start with a coach or professional, whether it's the club professional or an instructor at the course, they can be a great guide for you, let alone just from a technical standpoint, what you're doing in your swing or short game. They can be a great guide as far as, okay, I want to be a member of this course. How do we get there? What are my goals, right? How can we achieve these together? So you get up to a certain playing level, you can become a member. Okay, now I want to go on a trip, right? Oh, well, you probably shouldn't go on a trip until you've gotten fit for your clubs, because you're going to want good clubs that you can bring with you. So having that sort of guide, it really provides that service, so that along the way you kind of can make those decisions. And I wouldn't recommend for everyone to just step in and say, okay, well, I'm going to get a membership, fit my clubs, get a lesson. You're talking thousands of dollars right off the bat, right? Depending on where you are and what sort of course you're joining. But if you can kind of just get through the door, start out with a clinic or maybe one lesson. If you have some used clubs, maybe start with that. That's great. A lot of these courses, if you take a lesson, will have clubs that they can bring with them. So even if you don't have clubs, it's like, well, for an hour lesson, let's say you spend $75 on a lesson, right, for an hour. They'll bring the clubs, you get to experience it, see how it went. Maybe they say, okay, we actually have a little wine and wine later today, or we have a clinic, you should stick by, and, things like that. That's how you kind of get in the door. And then they can set you up with the clubs. Then they can talk to you about membership. So having that guide, I think, is important. Or at least someone that's involved with the game, a friend that plays the game a lot. Because I've seen it too, where people get into it for like a week. They spend a few $1,000s on clubs and get a membership, and then they don't really experience it all. And they don't stay after that first year. I think sort of that more long-term approach and gradually building your way up. And then that's more the approach I would take, because if you do it right, let's say you do get fit for your clubs, those clubs could last you 10 plus years, right? It's a little bit like skiing. I kind of relate it to that, where, if you do it right, if you get the right skis, you get fit, you find your sort of the trails that you like and the ones that you're not able to do, like the double black diamonds of moguls, you can still enjoy it, right? Mm-hmm. And sort of take that slow approach to improvement.
Henry, I really like what you just said there too, is almost just establishing goals. And obviously we're organizational people, financial planners, right? Is a lot of what we do, but kind of again, what I just heard you say, which I thought was really great, and I want to highlight, is being able to call that professional, talk to them, say, here's where I'm at, right? I've never picked up a club before. I really don't know what I'm doing. I need help. And here's what I'd like to accomplish, right? In the first year, I'd like to be able to get the golf ball in the air, right? Or whatever that is, right? Here's kind of my goals, so that I eventually at the end of this season or this year, I can then at least go out and play with my friends. And, I can, with the handicap system, at least I can feel like I'm keeping up a little bit. Right. Things like that, I think, is really important. Or, hey, what's really important to me is I'm really lonely, right? Is I don't have a whole lot of friend network. I've really been busy in my career. I'm retired and I want to meet people. Right. So it's really important for me to be able to just kind of meet new people, kind of have fun conversations, enjoy some of this together with somebody else I don't know. That's important for me. Right. Lots of different goals, and that golf is the vessel to do it. And what I hear you say is, just expressing that to the professional and saying, what do you think I should do? Because your point about being fit is, well, maybe I should wait until I get some skill, then get fit, and then the clubs will be good for 10 years. Versus if I get fit immediately in my golf, my golf skill isn't there, I get fit, and then all of a sudden I've done really well, I've really improved, and now my golf clubs really don't fit me anymore, something along those lines, right?
Right. Well, a lot of professionals will be the fitter, or they'll go to the fitting with you. So if you have a sort of technical thing you're working on, they can be at the fitting and tell the fitter, well, yes, that lie angle would be good for them right now, but can we try this lie angle or this shaft length or whatever? Because this is how we're kind of adjusting their swing. So they can be there throughout that process. And again, like if you're paying them and they're there with you, right, they're going to help you along the way, and they're going to be your sort of guide. And I think that's what you're finding more with these coaches and instructors, is it's not just a one-off lesson. It's a sort of holistic approach to, okay, now we have the fitness side, we can go to TPI, and then we have the club fitting side. And then we have, let's go on this trip to the UK. Like, this is going to be great. We'll play some games. It's going to be a 4-day trip. And then there's obviously the technical coaching side. So the coaches, the PGA professionals, they're coming at it from a much broader view now. It's not just this narrow focus of your club needs to be in this position at this point in your swing. Yeah, it's much more than that.
Yeah, that's great. So we've reached the end of our show, Henry. And I think it's very clear that you've spent a lot of time, if not your whole career, making people feel more successful and happier on the golf course. I want to kind of flip it around and talk about your own personal success and happiness. So one question we like to ask everyone is, how would you define a successful retirement? So sitting here today and looking ahead 30, 40 years to your own retirement, what do you think that will entail to be kind of deemed successful?
Well, this is probably going to change about 100 times from now in retirement. I would say right now, the opportunity to travel, to play golf, and still be involved from a coaching perspective. I look at a lot of these professionals that, especially the coaches who I look up to, and whether it's Butch Harmon or David Ledbetter, some of these names you might know, who are 70, 80 years old and still coaching the game, and they love it. I mean, Harvey Pennick, who was probably one of the best instructors ever, I think coached till the day he died, which is like, he's 88 or whatever he was. I can't remember, but that's pretty cool. I don't know if I'd want to be on the lesson tee all day long, but the idea of still being involved at some capacity, and even coaching myself, because I'm always trying to learn. I don't think I know the least thing about trying to go out and shoot like 10 under par. I mean, I still got to improve my game as well. Like, to say that anyone has this sport conquered is, I mean, even Tiger Woods is trying to get better every day. So for me, yeah, retirement, having the opportunity to travel and play and still coach. I love going to different courses in different regions. I'm a national park goer too, so that would be kind of a dream scenario where I could kind of national park hop, go play a course, and then do that as well. So, yeah.
Nice. Well, Henry, thank you so much for being on the show today. Again, learned a lot, but just anytime we can talk golf anyway, always a good excuse regardless. But for a lot of retirees that we know that really want to get into this, I think this will be a really good resource, really good help for them in the future. So can't thank you enough for being on the show today. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate you guys having me on, and I hope that our listeners have the opportunity to get out on the course this summer. We were up 30 to 40% last year in Maine, so I expect it's just going to keep going up. So thank you, listeners, for playing. And if you're just getting into the game, stick with it. Stay relaxed because it can be pretty stressful at times, but it'll all work out. You'll start hitting that driver straight and you'll be like, oh my gosh, I love this game. So,
all right, Henry. Well, thank you so much. We'll catch you next time. It's really great to have Henry Fall on the podcast today. Again, he, of course, is a co-host of the Maine Golf Talk Podcast. But what we were really interested in was especially his bent as a coach, right? He's a coach for Bates College. And he kind of just in passing mentioned this, but he has a tour caddy for like on the LPGA, right? For a lady, which is why he's out in Arizona there during the winter as he does caddy work. So like kind of has a lot of different various ranges of experience we wanted to bring to the show today. So I think Henry did a really great job representing all of that. And I know we covered a really wide range of things today, right? As there's so much we could kind of get into, but we wanted to make sure we're trying to make it as accessible as we could was the goal of today. So apologize if I got a little bit in the weeds here and there, but I think Henry did a good job kind of keeping it on a very kind of topical basis. So as always, like to highlight lessons that we learned from each show. So I'd like to have Abby just kind of start with Abby. What is something that you took away from the show today?
Yeah. So as somebody who doesn't really golf, I thought he did a really good job making the sport seem very accessible to people who, don't play very often or just getting into it. And I thought his point about different courses have different personalities was a really good point. So you can find one that kind of matches what you're looking for. You're going to feel more comfortable and more confident getting out there and playing. So I thought that was just a really good point that he made.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Because again, that's something where, I think everyone has this idea in their head of what they think it's going to be when they step on a golf course, right? That they think it's this really high intensity. You have to have lots of money and lots of comparisons going on, and which is why we wanted to bring up Alex Plummer episode on Goose River down in Lincolnville, right down by Camden, and that's something where again, barefoot and kind of a dog is going to fit right in there. There's a place up in Old Town, Hidden Meadows, that they had golf surfboards, right, that you could try out. So there's lots of kind of different cultures and experiences going around the state, and it can vary from course to course, which is the cool thing of what obviously they mentioned in their show is highlighting different cultures and what's kind of happening in different places. Because of course the higher end golf courses that cost more money, that are more established, those are going to be the prettier, the more maintained, and going to give you those views. But there's lots of different ways to experience the sport across the state. But Curtis, from your end, what was something that you took away?
Yeah, I think it kind of takes the accessibility that Abby was talking about and goes a little deeper. And once you're actually playing the game, I think Henry did a great job of just talking about how like everyone can play this game. Don't worry about if you're not great, if you've never played, or if you're way better than all your friends. Like there's ways to play this game to make it, seem even and competitive. And, whether it's, we talk about people who may be using this idea, the fear of, not fitting in at a golf course and, holding other people up, or, you look around and everyone's so much better than you. Like, there's ways to still play golf and not like hold up, like you're not going to bother everyone else by just going out and trying to play golf. And obviously the more you play, and hopefully you love it, and things will get better. And I think he just did a really good job explaining how literally everyone can play golf together.
I'll share a story too. Is I have a client that I've worked with for probably almost 20 years now, and after her husband passed, she moved to Florida. So she moves to Florida at, I think, 72. So she takes up golf for the first time at 72. She's again 90 or 91, 92 today. So she golfs 18 holes every day. I think she's down to like a 15 or 14 handicap, right? And she goes, I have so much fun with my friends, and we just enjoy the sun. We come back afterwards. We have a nice lunch together. She goes, it is the best part of my day. And something I just picked up like pretty, which again, for some people go at 72, isn't this too late? And she goes, no, this has kept me active. This has kept me social. This has kept me the best version of myself during retirement. And that's somebody I was thinking about when we were kind of talking about content was this today. And I'll kind of add another point is, I think Henry ended the episode on a really solid note, was the idea of coaching versus teaching. Because I think what, this legacy model we've seen in golf has been you need help, you sign up and you get one lesson or two lessons, and you spend an hour with one person, which, by the way, when you do it on that model, I've had that experience that all of a sudden you try one thing, and then, by the way, you forget some of the lessons, then you kind of incorporate the new lesson to the old thing you did. And now you're in the middle, and now you got lots of pain. So with Henry, what he's talking about is more coaching is you're seeing more of these golf pros getting into, what are you trying to accomplish? Let's set one goal. Let's really kind of take it one step by one step. And that's one of the things that Carrie Forbringer said as being a travel advisor that they've seen is not just transactional booking a trip. It's more coaching. For us, for financial advisors, is you're seeing more coaching and what do you want to do with your money and what do you envision that's happening? And again, that's the purpose of the show, is obviously retirement and what do you want to do with it? And one thing is golf. And so I think a lot of these things are kind of blending together, which is really great. Is again, it's life. It's not just, one niche or the other, but I'll say from my own perspective, hey, I've loved that. Hey, I've not been great in my past, and I've gotten better the last 4 or 5 years, but still probably below average. But I have so much fun having these experiences and being out with friends and getting outdoors where, we're in an indoor environment a lot with our clients and our offices. So, and he says, right, it's like you hit one really phenomenal golf shot and that just sticks with you for a long time. That's a really phenomenal experience. So I think there's a lot of stuff that encapsulates what, I know Curtis plays as well, but it's a lot of what I love personally about the sport and what I get out of it. But again, really, really excited to have the Henry Fall on the show today. Again, we want to also point you to some more resources. You can go to blog.guidancepointllc.com/38 or 38. So you can go to the website there and get some more resources. And we're going to point you to a little bit more of Henry's pieces, but also you can access Henry as a coach too. So we'll have that link there with links to Maine Golf Talk Podcast. So really appreciate everybody tuning into the show today. Again, I know for those that maybe aren't into golf, might not be your kind of number one show, but for those that are thinking of it, and for those that are really looking forward about what they want to do with their time, hopefully we gave some good places to start here. And again, even if you're 72 or 80, it's still a great place to start and kind of working with somebody. So reach out to the clubhouse, find somebody that you can kind of connect with and put some goals in place and have some fun hitting some golf balls. All right. Well, everybody, appreciate tuning in to Retirement Success in Maine podcast. Until next time, we'll see you later.